My father was a woodworker, and he taught me his trade. When I was 7 years old, I stood out in his workshop with him while he worked on a project, and I saw his old hand plane sitting on the workbench, and I'd seen him use that a thousand times. And for the first time ever, I picked up that old plane, and he made it look effortless when he used it. I found a piece of wood, and I put it in the vise, and I took that old plane, and I pushed it, just like I'd seen him do. And it clattered and chattered and jammed and wobbled all over hell. I couldn't get it to work. These little hands of mine I tried to imitate him over and over, and it jammed and jammed, and I got madder and madder, and I got more and more frustrated, and I was ready to just give up and put it down and walk away when he walked over to me, and he took those big hands of his and his big arms of his, he reached around me and put those big hands of his on top of mine, on top of the handles. And he showed me how to rock my knees, and he showed me how to shoot that plane down the board. And when he had his hands on mine, it was so smooth and effortless, it just went whoosh. It made that noise I'll always remember. Whoosh. And the shavings came out of the throat of that plane, round and tight and thin, and so thin you could read a newspaper through them. And while he had his hands on top of mine and that big warm body behind mine, whoosh, we pushed that plane together. And he told me the story of how an old woodworking tool will take on the spirit of its owners, and that particular plane had been owned by my great-grandfather and my grandfather, and it belonged to him, and one day, if I wanted it, it would be mine. And I kept pushing that plane, kept shooting it down the board, and while he told me that story, and I didn't know when he had let go of it, because I kept feeling the hands on top of mine, I kept feeling the body behind mine. The last thing he said to me is, the sound that plane makes is the sound of your grandfather's ghosts whispering. And I knew that it was true. I believed every word. I was an adult then. I became an adult, and I took the trade with me, and I had a woodworking shop of my own. And when I worked on projects, when things would go wrong, and I couldn't figure them out, when I kept getting annoyed and upset and frustrated, I knew it was time to call my dad. My dad would come over, and my daughter would see my father, and she'd jump into his arms. She loved her granddaddy, and he loved her. And he'd carry her around in those big arms. He'd walk into my workshop, and he'd have a look at what the problem was. He'd have a look at the project. He wouldn't talk to me. He'd talk to her. He'd say, well, you know, if your daddy just put a screw in here, or if he shaved it off right there, or cut it a little shorter, that'd fix it right up. My daughter would sit in his arms, and she'd say, I knew that. And she'd look over at me like I was some kind of a damn fool, and she'd say, why don't you do what Granddaddy says? And the thing that pissed me off is that he was always right. When my daughter was 7 years old, her granddaddy died. Very suddenly. And I did what sons have always done. I made all the arrangements and took care of all the problems, and the last thing I did was I sold off his tools and cleared out his workshop. I had tools of my own. But I kept that wood plane because it was what he said I could have. And I took it home and I put it on my workbench. A couple of weeks after I did that, I was working out in my workshop one night and my daughter came out. She hadn't been out much since Granddaddy died. But she saw that old wood plane sitting there, and I put there was a piece of wood in the vise. She walked over to it, she picked it up, and she had seen me use mine 1,000 times. She put that wood plane on the edge of that board, and she tried to push it like she'd seen me do so many times, and it clattered and chattered and jammed, and she got more and more frustrated, and she just couldn't make it work. And I put down my tools to walk over and help her like my father had done. But before I could get to her, I watched that plane snap up square and true on the edge of that board. I saw her get her hands on it, just like there was a pair of hands right behind her, holding on to hers. And all of a sudden, she rocked her knees, and the plane went down that board, and the shavings came out of it, round, tight, so thin you could read a newspaper through them. I heard that sound again. While she did it, I stood across that workshop from her, watching her use that tool, and I told her how the tools take on the spirit of the owners, and how that tool had been owned by her great-grandfather, her great-great-grandfather, her grandfather, by me now, and if she wanted it one day, she would have it. The last thing I said to her was, the sound of that plane is making is the sound of your granddaddy's ghost whispering to you. And she turned and she looked at me like I was some kind of a damn fool, and she said, I knew that.